Coming up, a pledge to unite to combat racial injustice and inequality. Business, civic, and community leaders come together in a first-of-its-kind effort. What's behind the move and why there is also a sense of urgency? Citizens Energy Group CEO Jeff Harrison and Eli Lilly and Company CFO Josh Smiley are here with some answers. And more than 12.1 million people are now employed in the U.S. manufacturing sector. Allegiant says it's on a mission to inspire the next generation of manufacturers. Allegiant leadership here to explain how a special day might help fuel the industry's talent pipeline. Plus,
I'm Mary Rachel Redmond on Geist Reservoir, where I caught up with the world's foremost agent-to-dead celebrities, from Marilyn Monroe to Elvis and James Dean. That story coming up.
Details on those stories and much more ahead on this edition of Inside Indiana Business. Hello and welcome to Inside Indiana Business. I'm Gary Dick. Indianapolis corporate leaders say the time is now to take a stand to address racial injustice and inequality. By taking the INDY Racial Equity Pledge, businesses are vowing to use their resources and influence to accelerate progress on racial equity in 4 areas: health, prosperity, education, and criminal justice. Now, with more on this pledge just announced this week, what prompted it and its goals, pleased to be welcomed to the show Citizens Energy Group President and CEO Jeff Harrison and Eli Lilly and Company CFO Josh Smiley. And gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Big announcement on this late in the week. Josh, I want to start with you. There are several components here. I mentioned the INDY Racial Equity Pledge. A number of companies, Lilly taking a lead on this as well. What is the pledge essentially all about?
Thanks, Gary. The pledge is really around what we as the business community and other organizations in Indianapolis can do to improve racial equality. And it's really using the resources that each of our organizations bring to set very specific goals. We have a website where each individual company can set goals around things like hiring or spend with Black-owned businesses, and sets a pledge and then tracks against that pledge so that we can hold all of ourselves accountable. It's a great opportunity for all the businesses in Indiana to come together to work on improving the outlook for racial equality in our city.
I know you talk a lot about accountability and this companies going to the website to make the pledge, but this is something that will be tracked going forward. So you can track progress or negatives as well that might come down the path.
That's right. I mean, Lilly, from our perspective, outlined 4 pledges this morning as part of the kickoff here, including, for example, doubling the spend, our spend with Black-owned businesses over the course of the next 2 years. So we put that pledge on the website, and now we'll track against that as we make progress against that goal. That's one example, and of course, then other leaders like Jeff and his organization have taken similar pledges.
Yes, and Jeff Harrison, the CEO at Citizens Energy Group. Jeff, you're really going to head up this broader effort, the Business Equity for Indy initiative. Talk about that, and I know a number of companies have already signed on to be a part of that effort.
Sure. Again, the Business Equity for Indy initiative is really a collection of aligned Central Indiana companies dedicated to working together to identify, will develop and implement programs across the city aimed at increasing the fairness and equitable participation in our economy by all our citizens, especially, Gary, people of color. And again, as you stated, we have a number of representatives from companies, and I want to thank the Indy Chamber and the Central Indiana Corporate Partnership for, again, helping to facilitate early conversations around this initiative.
Yeah, you talk about those early conversations with the Indy Chamber, CICP, and perhaps others. Talk about the path to get here. I assume there was a lot of discussion, a lot of ideas, a lot of back and forth that happened along the way.
Sure, sure, absolutely. It was one of those events where a bunch of leaders got together. We were called by, again, David Johnson and Michael Huber with CICP and Indy Chamber, respectfully, and really just started to have a conversation and dialogue about what and how businesses in the community should participate around this and in this area of racial justice. And again, as we were talking, even more events began to unfold around the region, around the nation, and it really, again, just galvanized our efforts, and we began to coalesce around then a path forward. We took that back to both members of the chamber, Indy Chamber, back to members of the Central Indiana Community Partnership, and again got some support, and it coalesced with those businesses as well. And so shortly after that, the Business Equity for Indy initiative then was launched.
Yeah, Josh, can you talk about the early reaction? So many companies, organizations involved, Cummins, Anthem, the Pacers, numerous others. Talk about the early reaction you're getting to this, the initiative, both the pledge and the initiative.
Yeah, I'd say first it started with our own employees. We have a great African-American resource network at Lilly, and many of the employees were bringing forward ideas as some of the events that Jeff was talking about unfolded over the spring and summer. So we realized that we had to do more as a company within the community. I think as we started to make announcements, including back in June, a $25 million pledge to invest in ideas around and policies around racial equality in Indiana, and also volunteer hours. We were hearing similar things from other companies that they were working on things, and we got together through the committee that Jeff mentioned, and it was just really energizing. I think the amount of alignment, I think, around wanting to address opportunities as a collective community. So far, I think I've been amazed at how receptive each of the companies have been to trying to work together on things like increasing hiring opportunities for African Americans, or, as I mentioned, spending more with Black-owned businesses. Yep. We can do so much more together if we work together on these things than each individual company. So it's really an exciting time.
Good. The Indy Racial Equity Pledge, also the Business Equity for Indy Initiative. Two major initiatives we're going to be hearing a lot about. I know Jeff Harrison with Citizens Energy Group, Josh Smiley, Eli Lilly and Company. Thank you both for your leadership, and we also look forward to following progress on these initiatives.
Thank you, Gary.
Thank you. Thanks, Gary.
Well, Penske Entertainment Corporation says it is revving up efforts to diversify the workforce at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and at the IndyCar Series. The owner of both IMS and IndyCar says the Race for Equality and Change initiative represents an effort to support diversity and inclusivity across the entire sport. Penske says it's establishing a procurement program to increase the number of minority-owned businesses that contract with IndyCar and the Speedway. The company says it's also expanding its relationship with NXG Youth Motorsports, a nonprofit that introduces minority students to motorsports. Well, for the blind and visually impaired, finding a job is really tough, but it has become a little easier thanks to organizations like BOSMA Enterprises, which has been on a mission to help employ the blind and visually impaired for more than a century. Up next, how the organization is using technology to carry out its important mission during the pandemic. It's time to go inside innovation, brought to you by Allegiant, pioneering safety. Well, here's a striking statistic. In Indiana, the unemployment rate for people who are blind or visually impaired is about 63%. Indianapolis-based BOSMA Enterprises is continuing its work to help lower that number. CEO Jeffrey Mittman just celebrated his first anniversary in that top executive role. He joins me now to explain his strategic plan to grow the organization's footprint, how innovation is a key element as well. And Jeff, welcome back to the show.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You know, those numbers, 63% unemployment in the blind and visually impaired segment of our economy, really striking. For those who don't know, and BOSMA has been around for more than 100 years, give us a thumbnail of the efforts that you do on a daily basis at BOSMA.
Well, our mission at BOSMA is to provide opportunities for people who are blind or visually impaired, and we currently employ about 200 individuals providing products to the federal government and other customers throughout the state, throughout the nation. And of those 200 employees, about 55% of them are blind, all the way from our newest temporary employee up to me as the CEO. So we make a big effort of doing that. We also provide blind rehabilitation for the state of Indiana. We served about 800 Hoosiers last year. Yeah. So every chance we get through employment or training, we try to provide those opportunities for people who are blind.
And you are getting many more opportunities through the pandemic. We want to talk about how BOSMA really does operate like a business in so many ways in a moment. But through the pandemic, your business load, if you will, for PPE and those types of things, personal protective equipment, has really skyrocketed. Talk about demand and the workload there at BOSMA.
Well, our demand through our federal customers has really increased as we serve mainly the Department of Veterans Affairs, and that's a big deal for me as a veteran myself. But we provide the PPE to the VA, and as their demand has surged, we've had to surge our supply to them. So working with our partners, those 9 p.m. calls with factories in Malaysia or other countries, trying to locate those products for the federal government, making sure we can get it to them in a timely manner to take care of veterans is really important to us. And my team's been focused on ensuring that we're providing what our customers need, when they need it, and how they need it to protect our nation's veterans and the employees of the federal government and our community partners. So I'm very proud of what they've been able to do.
Yeah, so this has been a real boon for BOSMA. Do you anticipate this demand will continue and the demand for your services will continue?
Well, as we worked with our strategic partners all around the world, really, we're seeing the demand probably continue on for the next year or two, that surge, and ensuring that we increase our capacity and our ability to configure and produce products for our customers is really our main focus. So ensuring that our team understands what's going on, how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it, it's really important, and they've done a wonderful job with that. So that demand will continue on into the near future. Yeah,
Jeff, as CEO, you've been really a force in expanding the BOSMA footprint, and I know that you're in the process of doing that in a bigger way. Talk about the opportunities or the potential for BOSMA really growing in a number of ways.
Well, one of the first things I did as CEO is we developed a new 3-year strategic plan, and one of the big pillars of that is diversification, and we were looking to do that through mergers and acquisitions. So over the past year, we've worked with mergers and acquisitions firm, and we've identified over 200 companies, taken a look at 200 companies, and we're really actively engaging 3 or 4 right now to actually acquire. As a not-for-profit, we're going out and looking to purchase for-profit companies. And the whole reason for that is, like any other company, we want to diversify our revenue stream, but ultimately to meet our mission, mission of providing opportunities for people who are blind or visually impaired. And we're going to do that through acquisitions as well as expanding our current lines of business.
BOSMA Enterprises continues to do great things. Jeff Mittman, the CEO at BOSMA, really a great business story as well. We'll continue to watch your expansion and the work you do at BOSMA. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Well, James Dean, Maya Angelou, Neil Armstrong, and Amelia Earhart, they have more in common than you might think. Their legacies are being preserved and protected by a company with some deep Indiana roots. Mary Rachel Redmond explains in this week's Around Indiana report. Here's what's making news now around Indiana, brought to you by Chapman Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing. The man for all seasons, Chapman, chapmanheating.com. Well, for nearly 40 years, one Hoosier has reigned king as the premier attorney for dead celebrities. Around Indiana reporter Mary Rachel Redmond has details.
You ain't nothing but
Elvis, James Dean,
diamonds are a girl's
best friend.
Marilyn Monroe, all dead for several decades, but still making big bucks. And they all have one man in common.
That's Babe Ruth's daughter.
His name is Mark Rossler, and he's the foremost expert in protecting the rights of the famous deceased.
These are the suits from the Blues Brothers.
In fact, he quite literally pioneered the industry himself after getting a law degree from IU nearly 40 years ago.
I was in the right place at the right time. I went to the chairman of the company. I said, I would stick around for a little longer if we set up a separate company where we could use some of this expertise and represent outside clients. And he said thought that was a good idea.
That company would soon become CMG Worldwide. And as founder, Rossler now represents what one might call the who's who of the departed, from the king of pop to the king of rock, and over 300 of the most sought-after celebrities and brands in the world.
I started the business here in Indianapolis in 1981. I was a young attorney, and I thought that there were ways that we could protect name and likeness. This is a Marilyn Monroe skirt.
Before Rossler, a celebrity's right to cash in on their valuable name ended when they died, leaving their loved ones with no control over who could profit from their likeness.
May I have some dirt, please?
One of the first to benefit from Rossler's help happened to be a fellow Hoosier.
I can remember him really like an older brother.
Marcus Winslow is the cousin of James Dean, and he still lives on the very farm where Jimmy, as he was known in Fairmount, grew up.
Oh yeah, the movie posters are original. East of Eden to Rebel Without a Cause, and Rebel wasn't even done yet when he got cast for Giant, and he just finished Giant when he died. So he really only did three major movies.
And despite making only 3 pictures before his untimely death in 1955, his Rebel Without a Cause image started popping up all over the world and was making someone a lot of money.
You know, for a long time we'd seen people with James Dean t-shirts and so forth, and I never seen anything that wasn't in good taste, but it's just, you'd see him wearing these t-shirts and it seemed strange. You'd think, well, you know, someone is selling that to him, and the family has no say-so in it.
I had grown up a few miles away from where James Dean was buried, so I went up and talked to the family and said, hey, I'm trying to do some things with the Elvis Presley estate, and I think we can also protect James Dean. And they thought, well, that was interesting. So that was our second client.
When CMG took over, we started having some say-so in what was done and how it was done, and we got into a couple major lawsuits.
Took a lot of unnecessary chances.
Warner Brothers saw James Dean as a great example. They surprised us, and they filed a lawsuit for $90 million. Warner Brothers took the position that they owned everything. We took the position that they owned nothing.
And it turned out to be the landmark case that would put Rossler on the map.
We went to trial. It was a 2-week trial, and we won on every single issue.
And it turned out to be a good thing for us. We never had anybody challenge our rights after that.
And thanks to Rossler, Dean's iconic image is worth more today than when Dean was at the height of his career, cut too short.
How old would Jimmy be? 89.
Mary Rachel Redmond, Inside Indiana Business.
All right, Mary Rachel, thank you. Well, also making headlines around Indiana this week, big news in Fort Wayne. RTM Ventures, the developer behind the Electric Works Mixed-Use Innovation District, and Fort Wayne Mayor Tom Henry have announced a tentative agreement to move that big project forward in the city's downtown. The Model Group has joined RTM as the new co-developer for Electric Works. And Tim Ash, CEO of Fort Wayne-based insurance firm Ash Brokerage, has signed on as an investor and general partner. The first phase of Electric Works expected to cost about $280 million. The developer has already secured more than $215 million in private funding, as well as federal and state tax credits. The city and RTM Ventures say they'll work to close on the project by the end of the year. A mixed-use development in South Bend is adding a big name to its list of tenants. The University of Notre Dame and Indianapolis-based Kite Realty Group Trust say Trader Joe's will anchor the south end of Eddy Street Commons near the university's campus. Eddy Street Commons is described as a mixed-use, new urbanist, pedestrian-oriented development. The university says the project's two phases represent nearly $300 million in investment, and it includes retail, restaurant, and offices, as well as apartment development. Well, Indiana has historically been a manufacturing powerhouse, but companies continue to face a big challenge when it comes to finding skilled workers. We'll show you what Allegion and other companies are doing to market manufacturing jobs to that next generation of Hoosier workers. Well, over the next decade, some 4.6 million manufacturing jobs will likely be needed. 2.4 million expected to go unfilled, believe it or not, due to the skills gap, based on a study by Deloitte and the Manufacturing Institute. Now, Allegion's Indianapolis manufacturing operations employ more than 650 people, and the average length of service currently more than 9 years. I'm pleased to welcome to the show Vice President of Global Operations and Integrated Supply Chain at Allegion, Cindy Farr. She has much more on the company's mission to inspire that next generation of manufacturers. Cindy, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Gary. Glad to be here.
Yeah, and I should mention, Allegion is a really an innovation-focused company, again, with a big manufacturing presence here in Indianapolis and Indiana that predecessor companies have had here for decades. Talk about your manufacturing presence here in Indianapolis.
I would love to, Gary. As you said, Allegion is an innovator. We're a global company with manufacturing worldwide. Here in the United States, we have 12 manufacturing plants, over 3,000 employees, with really our flagship facility right here in Indianapolis on the south side. We have approximately 650 employees. We produce exit devices and security hardware for both the commercial and residential markets.
We've got Manufacturing Day, which is a national program started in 2015. Really an effort to expose manufacturing careers. And I know Allegion is, among other companies, but Allegion has been very focused on this. You put a lot of effort into this. This year, you will do it virtually. Why do you get engaged in this National Manufacturing Day? Why is it important to do it?
We get engaged because we want to be on the forefront on inspiring the next generation of manufacturing employees. I'm sure you've heard about the skills gap, and it's very real. It's very real in manufacturing. I can tell you across our U.S. operations and even our global operations, it's difficult to find enough employees to fill our roles. I would hesitate to say we have open roles in every site as we speak. As I speak to my peer companies and supply base, they're facing the same thing. And the issue is that, as you mentioned at the top of the show, there's more job growth in manufacturing than there are new entries into the manufacturing field.
Yeah.
So one of the ways that we can help is to participate in this program.
Yeah, I want to touch on this too, Cindy, because we all know manufacturing's impact on the economy. Jobs typically pay above the average, but there's also an aspect of national security that manufacturing plays a critical role.
Correct. As you said, manufacturing is important for a number of reasons. It's good for the economy. Sometimes we forget it's good for the national security. And I think this is a good time to highlight that because it's really front and center with what we've all gone through and are going through with the global pandemic. I think we've all heard the news reports of manufacturing operations converting their operations very quickly to be able to produce urgent PPE, urgent supplies. I'm especially proud of our Steelcraft operation in Cincinnati, which has expedited steel doors and steel frames for COVID test labs. And then also the Kokomo facility, the GM facility that we've all heard about that produced ventilators. That's actually, I think I mentioned to you where I started my manufacturing career 30 years ago.
Very good. Well, Allegion doing its part and more in inspiring that next generation of manufacturing talent. Cindy Farr, VP of Global Operations and Integrated Supply Chain at Allegion. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. We'll be right back after this. Well, more than 40 million echocardiograms have been performed in the U.S. alone. But many may not know this standard heart imaging technique was developed right here in Indiana. Homegrown Hoosier Dr. HARVEY FEIGENBAUM received an award this week that honors his legacy as the father of echocardiography. Business of Health reporter Kylie Valletta has more. Kylie.
Thank you, Gary. Earlier this week at the Indiana Life Sciences Summit, BIOCROSSROADS presented Dr. FEIGENBAUM with the 2020 August Watanabe Life Sciences Champion of the Year Award. He's recognized internationally for pioneering the echo, which is the use of ultrasound to examine the heart. Mastered by Dr. FEIGENBAUM in 1965, the echo is now the most widely used heart imaging technique in the world and is credited for saving millions of lives. He joins me now to talk about his recent award and share his very interesting story. Dr. FEIGENBAUM, thanks for being on the show today.
It's my pleasure.
And congratulations on your award as well. I think one of the neatest parts of your story is that taking us back to the 1960s when you were developing it, you said you faced a lot of skepticism. So tell us about that and how you were able to overcome that skepticism.
Well, it is an interesting story. The skepticism was based on several factors. First of all, I had the misfortune of having another heart test that was touted by a very established cardiologist in Philadelphia. It was called ballistocardiography. It was touted as the next best heart test that was going to be, and it turned out to be a bust. And that downfall occurred not long before I said, I've got the next best cardiology test. And they also said, well, look, the other doctor was an established doctor, and it turned out you're just a 30-year-old nobody from Indiana. Who's going to listen to you as having a major test? To make matters worse was that I wasn't the first to use ultrasound to examine the heart. It has started at least 10 years earlier by several people, but one in particular in Sweden. And he had a Siemens instrument that was, and his from a co-worker whose father was actually a Nobel Prize winner for physics. Anyway, after working about 5 years in it, the co-worker, the physicist who worked with him, said there's no future here. They weren't certain, and Siemens was obviously disappointed. They hired the leading cardiologist in the world, Paul Dudley White. He was Eisenhower's private physician and one of the founders of the American Heart Association. He visited this doctor in Sweden. He looked at the ultrasound and agreed, there's no future here. It's nonsense. Well, that was known. And the application that they were touting did turn out to be nonsense. And so when I came out with a new application, they said, here we go again. So that's starting it all.
Well, I know you were able to overcome so many challenges and break through those barriers. I think another important part of your story is that all of this occurred. You developed all of this right here in Indiana, and that's really an important piece of your story that you want to get out there.
Yeah, I've always said that the difference between Indianapolis and Boston is that Boston takes the opinion, if it's not developed in Boston, it can't be any good. Here in Indiana, we usually say, well, if it's developed in Indiana, it must not be good. No, one of the reasons I enjoyed this particular award, because it did come from Indiana. And I want the people of Indiana to be proud of the fact that here we have the world's leading leading heart imaging or taking pictures of the heart was developed right here in Indiana by a homegrown Hoosier. Outside for the year in Philadelphia as an intern, I've lived my entire life here in the state of Indiana.
And I'm going to share your age, Dr. FEIGENBAUM. You're 87, about to turn 87, very much not retired. You still teach, you still do research, you still read clinical echocardiograms. And just give us a quick explanation. You're also in the startup community here in Indiana.
In the 1980s, I felt that we needed to convert from videotape to digital. And I had some experience with digital, which I said, my God, that's the way we have to go. Well, that was a challenge. And I had some local IU computer and engineers work on something, but it was very crude, not very good. So it so happened that my son, who was a former aerospace engineer for TRW in California, moved back to Indiana to develop some scientific software. And I asked if his people could help develop technique for recording and displaying echocardiograms digitally. Well, I told him what I wanted, and in a relatively short period of time, he gave me what I wanted, and he blew me away.
And your son has now started his own company, right?
Well, he actually, the company was started. I just found a new application for it. He was teaching, it was an engineering product, which is just for everything, not just as echocardiography.
Well, I think that the DNA is in.
Away.
Yeah, he has some very smart DNA in him. So,
well, I'd like to think that.
I hate to cut you off, Dr. Feigenbaum, but we're out of time. Sure. It's so hard because you have such a great story to tell. But congratulations on your award. You really are an exemplary Hoosier that have done some amazing things and still doing. Thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, thank you.
And Gary, back to you.
All right, Kylie, thank you. Well, when the pandemic first hit, school districts all over Indiana went into scramble mode on how to implement e-learning quickly and efficiently. Fishers-based Matrix Integration created a classroom of the future, what it calls a cost-efficient, high-tech remote learning platform that rapidly gets teachers and administrators up to speed. How does it work, and why is the private sector an important part of the equation? For some answers now, we turn to Matrix Integration Vice President of Sales and Marketing, Reggie Grisham, and Mooresville Schools Assistant Superintendent, Jake Allen. And gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having us.
Okay, we talk of the classroom of the future. Things are so different now in the age of the pandemic. Jake, I'll start with you because really this need to implement e-learning and to do a lot of things differently, that kind of led to this, this whole classroom of the future. Talk about how things really got started.
Yes, sir. We have been integrating technology to the classroom for quite some time, but we have never been asked to integrate so much in such a quick time. We had a very strong and solid short-term plan, but of course with COVID, there was a great need for a long-term solution that would provide a higher quality of education. So we began working with Matrix and Cisco over the summer and were able to sample their product and find that it was excellent, high quality, and would meet our needs. And so we wanted to put together a solid plan entering into this school year, and we were able to do that with Matrix and Cisco.
Talk about, because I know all systems were, I guess, essentially in the same boat, but what a daunting challenge, at least initially as you looked at it, what that was like.
Yes, sir. It was quite a big task in front of us, and we knew that we had to reach a lot of kids and to do so effectively. And 90% of our kids came back in the traditional environment, but 10%, a significant portion, around 600 students, stayed home. So we needed to be able to educate them just as well as we did with the students in the class, and that's a daunting task. But we put together a pretty good plan, and we're able to do that, and we're very, very thankful that we're capable.
Reggie, Matrix is an IT infrastructure company. Talk about developing, in partnership with Cisco, developing this classroom of the future and really what it is all about.
Yeah, our relationship with Cisco goes over many years. The product is basically many components, being cameras and endpoints, and multiply tying that together to allow collaboration. One of the big key features in it is being able to have the video conferencing feature that is, shared kind of like what we're doing today, all the way to what parents and teachers can do with one another, and even with the students. So being able to implement that solution, making sure it has a good solid infrastructure and the correct bandwidth was essential in implementing a solution for Mooresville.
Yeah, is this something, Reggie, that you feel can be applied or implemented in other school systems and maybe even beyond the K-12?
Yeah, absolutely. K-12 is kind of our niche and our bread and butter. We also have universities and colleges that are entertaining this as well. As we all know, the pandemic has hit all different aspects of business. So we're also looking into other areas, financial institutions being able to collaborate with their customers through drive-through service, as you're accustomed to pulling up to a drive-through service and looking at some buttons, but now being able to have a video conference or interface with an individual, so being able to adapt that in that industry as well.
Jake, talk about what this classroom of the future, what it means for Mooresville, how it works. And also, I know you wanted to make a point that there is a human element that is still part of this, even though it's very technology rich, there's a human element too.
Yeah, to Reggie's point, the connection between the teacher and the student is so critical and important for the learning process. And the teachers like it, the students like it. And one comment that we keep hearing is that they're still able to make those connections and build those relationships. So that is a critical aspect in the learning and education process. And we're extremely happy that we're able to keep those students involved who are not in the traditional setting, and they're still able to feel like they're part of the class. The teachers know who they are, and it's a pretty fluid process in between the two.
Yeah, Reggie, final word to you. And I guess this would be an example of as education really transforms itself post-pandemic ultimately. The private sector, I'm sure you would agree, the private sector has a role to play here.
Absolutely, it does. We deal on both sides, the public and the private, and the private sector is definitely just as adaptive to this technology as the education side, because there's a shift from having employees physically into the business now to working from home. A lot of private sectors are coming to us and asking us for guidance and direction around that as well.
All right, the classroom of the future. It is real and ongoing, if you will, in Mooresville schools. And Jake Allen is assistant superintendent there in Mooresville. Reggie Gresham, the vice president of sales and marketing at Matrix Integration, the developer of this new classroom of the future. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
All right, we'll talk to you soon. Well, the Wabash Heartland Innovation Network is laying the groundwork for what it calls the densest agricultural weather network in the entire country. That weather network is currently made up of about 150 weather stations in WIN's 10-county region in north central Indiana. WIN says the network can be utilized to predict the path of a storm or an amount of rainfall based on empirical data from the stations. Historical data also helps with insight into what the conditions were during a growing season and information on any possible crop diseases. The network says data from the 150 stations along with weather data are shared with WIN's Ag Alliance members. Up next, college basketball is back. Athletes finally returning to the court with their eyes on the prize of a championship in April.
Stop whatever you're doing, folks, because it's Final Four time from Indianapolis.
For the 8th time, the road to the Final Four will end in Indy. What will it look like in the new reality of COVID-19, and how will the NCAA season play out? We'll get some answers from NCAA Senior VP of Basketball, Dan Gavin.
Indiana and college basketball.
And history is about to occur.
There's just something different about the game here in Hoosier State.
Very true. And if all goes as planned, Indianapolis, for the 8th time in history, will host college basketball's biggest weekend. The pandemic will no doubt change the look and feel of the championship. It has already altered the college basketball season. The road to the 2021 NCAA Men's Final Four will end in Indianapolis next April, but it begins this coming week with a delayed official start of practice that will lead to a delayed official start of the season next month. Bill Benner has details inside Indiana sports. Bill?
Gary, thanks. And as with everything else in our pandemic-impacted world, college basketball has had to alter its calendar with the start of practice delayed till October 14th, and the start of the season moved until Wednesday, November 25th. Joining us today to look ahead at what hopefully will be is the NCAA Senior Vice President of Basketball, Dan Gavitt. Dan, welcome to the program, and thanks for making time to join us.
Bill, great to be with you, my friend.
It's, again, this has been so many variables and things going into all this, but it has to be exciting for the NCAA staff to know that even on a slightly delayed basis and with a slightly altered maximum minimum number of games, the college basketball practice begins and we can look forward to the start of the season.
Very much so, Bill. You know, after a long summer for all of us of uncertainty and anxiety, to know that we have a date for the start of the season, Wednesday, November 25, the day before Thanksgiving, and starting practice next Wednesday, the 14th of October, is very encouraging and optimistic. And I think it's lifted everybody around the game of college basketball to have a season, different as it may be, but we're very hopeful and excited about the possibilities.
And November 25th, not an arbitrary date, determined to coincide with the exit of students from campus for what will be the start of their breaks.
It was, and that was really the biggest key in the decision to move the season back by 15 days from November 10 to November 25. By that date, 3/4 of Division I schools across the country will have either completed their first semester in total, including exams, or at least sent the general student body home to finish classes virtually and to have exams online. So it creates a much less populated campus environment, much more controlled environment to start the season safely across the country.
Dan, again, you're going to have 27 maximum regular season games, 13 minimum regular season games, and I think it has to have a minimum of 4 non-conference games, so you can kind of get some measure of teams, how they measure up not only within their own leagues, but certainly how they measure up with the college basketball field at large.
That's right, Bill. So the reduction of 4 games coincided with a 2 weeks delay. So 4 less play dates, 4 less games. And then the minimum number of contests was put in because understanding that there may be significant disruption on campuses with schedules and or just even the financial challenge of the testing that's required to play a safe and responsible basketball season. It may be that some conferences, like the Ivy League, for example, that may not start until after January 1st, only plays conference games and only plays a reduced schedule. But the basketball committee thought it was important to put a guideline out there, at least, to encourage 4 non-conference games against Division I opponents to help with the seeding selection process for the tournament and really for the benefit overall of the season. You know, we've got the Crossroads Classic here in Indianapolis, which is great. Rivalries locally and interconference play, and that kind of thing was being encouraged by the 4 Division I non-conference games.
And of course, the charm of the NCAA tournament is the diversity among its membership, private, public, large, small, everything in between. But this was a consensus decision coming out of the basketball committee, the Division I council. I mean, people got together on this and said, this is the road we need to take.
Yeah, very much so. It's a great point. I mean, we got 350 plus Division I teams that play college basketball. You know, it's hard to get majority opinion on anything, and in this uncertain time, you know, getting to a consensus that was in the best interest for all, not perfect for anyone particularly, but kind of a grand compromise of sorts. Some thought that we should leave the start of the season on November 10th. Others thought maybe we should move the start of the season all the way back to January. But where we ended, I think, was the best consensus position, and we worked, you know, really weeks even over the course of the entire summer, learning from what was going on with college football and the NBA and WNBA, and got to a point, I think, that we were comfortable with a lot of different things in place to start the season successfully in late November. Fundamental to all that really is testing and having testing be more widely available so that teams will test a minimum of 3 times per week to make sure that when we take the court, that student athletes and coaches are safe and healthy and we can have great games.
Dan, just got about a minute left. Of course, we mentioned in the open that the Final Four will be back in Indianapolis next April if everything goes as scheduled. And I think a certain amount of comfort level with the fact that, ironically, it will be in Indianapolis, home of the NCAA headquarters.
Without a doubt, this is our home, as everyone knows, for NCAA headquarters, and it's the place where we've had so many successful Final Fours in great collaboration with the Indiana Sports Corporation and IUPUI and the Horizon League and, all the great partners at Lucas Oil Stadium and Bankers Life, you name it. This is probably the most comfortable of all the places we hold the Final Four, certainly the most experience we've had. So it's really fortunate that we're having the Final Four this year for our staff and planning. We've been working on it for years, of course, but more specifically since June with monthly meetings. And, we're considering having to make some adjustments as necessary, but we're really excited to be having the Final Four here in Indianapolis, which will be a celebration, I think, of sorts for the game of college basketball after last year's disappointment of canceling the tournament.
And we should also point out that Fort Wayne will host the Division III NCAA championship, and Evansville will host the Division II. Dan, we really appreciate you coming on the show, and we certainly look forward to the ball being tipped off in November 25th, and we'll see, hopefully, everybody in April at Lucas Oil Stadium. Dan, thanks for being on with us.
Thanks, Bill. Have a great day.
Okay, you too, my friend. Gary, back to you.
All right, Bill, thank you. Well, Lawrence-based Monarch Beverage Company, the largest beer distributor in the state, will soon be under new ownership. Monarch has agreed to be acquired by Illinois-based Reyes Beer Division, though financial terms of that deal not being disclosed. Now, Reyes Beer Division owns and operates more than a dozen beer distributors across 6 states in the District of Columbia. The company says Monarch's about 600 employees will be brought into the fold. Monarch Beverage, as a local staple, was founded in 1947, has been locally and family-owned from the start. The acquisition expected to close December 11. The pandemic created a plot twist for organizers of Indiana's largest film festival.
Yeah, I gotta go. It's movie night.
Up next, Heartland Film goes retro, turning the Tibbs Drive-In Theater to serve as the main stage to celebrate this year's Heartland International Film Festival. Details when we come back. A dramatic clip from the documentary Stunt Women, The Untold Hollywood Story. It's one of 76 films being showcased at the 29th Heartland International Film Festival in Indianapolis. Organizers of this year's event had to rewrite the script on how they would pull off hosting a film festival in the middle of a pandemic. They came up with a plan that combines high-tech virtual components, the Tibbs Drive-In Theater and Conner Prairie serving as film screening locations. And for more on this innovative approach, we're pleased to be joined by Heartland Film Artistic Director Greg Sorvig. And Greg, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you for having me.
You look like you're in outer space. A bunch of stars in back of you there. It looks good.
I'm kind of floating around a little bit. Yeah.
Very good. Well, a lot of people know and have heard of the Heartland Film Festival. 29 years. Really an amazing institution in our community. Typically, this would be a big red carpet affair, a lot of people downtown milling around and interacting. This year, a lot different. Talk about this new virtual Heartland Film Festival and what it's all about.
Yeah, we're still 11 days, but we are utilizing the hybrid model. So between in-person, safe, socially distanced drive-in screenings at the Tibbs Drive-In and our new partners at Conner Prairie, we have the classic experience, if you will, to watch movies on the big screen. But additionally, we have safe, virtual, secure screenings that you can watch from home. And additionally, a lot of the films you can watch anywhere in the U.S. or even around the world. So we're very excited to do that. And at the Tibbs Drive-In, it's our opening night tonight. And we actually have a red carpet, so pun intended, so you can still technically drive through the red carpet.
Oh, that's great, the red carpet. Okay, I like it. For those who don't know, maybe for those who do know, talk about the impact, in your view, that this festival has had over the years and how it puts Indianapolis really on an international stage.
Yeah, definitely. There are over 9,000 plus film festivals around the entire world. We're Indiana's largest, longest running film festival. We're Oscar qualified in 3 categories. We've expanded to a short film festival as well. So we've really become a staple. We've become an industry player. We've had huge Oscar winners, nominees come through Indianapolis over the past years. So we're really excited to continue that momentum with some exciting films, but in a new way.
Yeah, lots of films are going to be showcased. We've got a couple of clips. One is Eat Wheaties. What can you tell us about that film?
Yeah, Eat Wheaties. It stars Tony Hale, who's known from Veep and Arrested Development, who's Forky in Toy Story 4, as Sid Straw, a middle-aged man who's tasked with organizing his college reunion. He's not very social media literate, so he goes online and he knows Elizabeth Banks, the actress, went to college with her. So he's trying to convince the world and social media that he knows Elizabeth Banks. So it's just a really fun comedy, themes of connection that probably meant something different before the pandemic. But it's a great opening night film, U.S. premiere right here in Indianapolis.
That's great. We've only got about 30 seconds, but quickly, Stunt Women. We saw some of the, that's an action film. Talk about that film.
Yeah, you hear stunt man a lot, but stunt women have been doing stunts in Hollywood since 1914, and this film is directed by April Wright, and it documents that. We're showing that both virtually and at the big screen at the TIBS.
Yeah, and to wrap up this year, you're going through the 18th, so this is a long-running event this year, right?
It's a long run. Yeah, we've done 11 days in the past, so we're still bringing 11 days, but we have a lot of content from panels, Q&As. You can still interact with filmmakers in a live capacity and check out a lot of films. So whether you're a streamer, you want to go to the drive-in, we have something that you can check out.
Very good. Greg Sorvig is the artistic director at Heartland Film. This year, virtually, it's really going to be a cool event in a very different way. Greg, thanks for joining us and good luck with the event.
Hey, thank you so much.
All right. And I'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Coming up next week, we will talk with retiring First Merchants Bank CEO Mike Recken. He's had a long banking career in Indiana. We'll ask him what's next as well. Thanks for joining us this week. I'm Gary Dick. Go out and make it a successful week.
Inside Indiana Business with Gary Dick is a production of Grow Indiana Media Ventures with support from WFYI Productions.